I believe chapters 20 to 22 are all interlinked. Of course, you might say or argue, well, all Revelation actually from 1 to 22 are all interlinked. But I would say this chunk from 20 to 22 should not be taken as a separate theme, simply because first, there are no chapters in the Hebrew manuscript, including the New Testament. And also, there's a tendency that we might say, so there's now a shift of theme or mood from 20 to 21, and then we can say that 21 and 22 are in the same mood. I would rather say, and this is based on my interpretation, that actually from 20 to 22, that's just one theme, because we discussed last time that God is in the business of reconciling people. And we can see that total reconciliation here starting in chapter 21. So I just like to share my screen now. All right, here. And just let me know if I don't hear anything from you, that means you can see it clearly. All right. So Revelation of Liberation, that's the title of our entire series, if you are new to this session. And here is the breakdown. Chapter 1, this is according to my exposition, okay? Shows the meeting of the Apostle John and the Revelator. Again, Jesus Christ is the Revelator. John, it could be the apostle of one of the disciples, is only the recipient of the revelation. So the proper, since this is almost ending, the proper way to say revelation is the revelation of Jesus Christ to John. Okay, it's not John the Revelator. That's a misconception. So chapters 2, 3, 6 to 11, I take this as one chunk. They got just one theme. Why? Simply because it's written in the chiastic method of writing. That's in Hebrew. It just keeps on repeating. It's the same idea, but different methods and different approach. For instance, the 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, it just talks about one thing, and we discussed that already. It's just using different metaphors, different symbols, and we call that figures of speech. That's why we have churches, seals, trumpets, and bowls. So I already discussed the symmetry that the first church actually is in parallel with the first seal, first trumpet, and first bowl, and you get the idea until the seventh. So 7, you have their parallelism. So it's very coherent. It's all about Jesus Christ, because this is a Christocentric study on the book of Revelation. So reveal the future of the church and the conditions she must go through. So chapters 4 and 5 depict the worshippers praising God. So like I said, there are always interludes. When in fact, the first reading or first instance, first encounter with this book, it's frightening, isn't it? As if you have there the beast, you have violence, you got there mysterious things, strange things. But actually, you can see interludes as well in between, and that's praising in heaven. And I already alluded to that. That only shows that God is indeed in control. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care or he's got nothing to do with what's happening here. Like today, you have that war in Ukraine. Of course, he cares about the people there that are victims of that war. Also now, the war in the Middle East and the looming war, and then the past pandemic. Of course, God cares. But what we can see here in Revelation is that the continuous praising and worship in heaven, which gives us an idea that God's will is being accomplished in all generations. Actually, when we begin with the first century Christian up to our generation now, I might say, well, you might actually disagree, but according to the revelation of Jesus Christ, everything is according to his timing, his schedule. Even his second coming is on time. It's, well, you might hear this first. It's not delayed. God has his timing. Why would he delay? Why would he waste time? God is not like that. He doesn't waste any time, any resource. Whatever God does is on the dot because he's perfect. So, and that's actually what's been going on here in Revelation. Even the persecution, even the that actually served to strengthen the church, and the blood of the martyrs uh was like a seed. That's why the church grew out of the martyrdom, out of persecution. Well, you might say, why God? Perhaps God should do a better job in what he's doing. Well, can we suggest that? Are we wiser than God? Of course, God is well informed and he's got no bounds, no limit. So why should he change his ways when in fact he knows the beginning to the end, simply because he's the Alpha and the Omega. So in 15, we have highlighting the worshipers praising God. Okay. And then 16 to 18, we have here the answer to the prayer of the saints, their outcry to God. When will they receive justice? When will God intervene? And that's why you have the 7 trumpets and then the 7 bowls. And 19 demonstrates how the worshippers are praising God. So you have here a continuous theme of praising God, continuous theme of worship in heaven. And that theme is will never be disrupted simply because, again, God is eternal. So it's all a continuous act according to his continuous guidance and basing on his continuous love. Chapter 20 expounds the end of Satan or the enemy and the apostate church. We discussed that last time. So now, 21 to 22, proclaim God's eternal reign in the New Jerusalem and the reward of the saints. Well, you might say, well, you have there the division from 20 to 22. Actually, the end of the enemy and the evil angels and evil itself, sin, is part of the eternal reign, which is actually depicted by the New Jerusalem. And that's the answer to the call of the saints. All right, so let's go now to stop, and then I'm going to share another thing. This one is the text itself. Well, if you have any questions or additional thoughts or any inspiration, you can share that later. Before 8 o'clock, I'm going to stop. So, New Heaven and New Earth. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version 21. So, I believe you have your pen and paper with you or notebook. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So I actually highlighted last time, that was last session, that the heaven and earth made new, okay? Simply because this time there's no more enemy, no more evil, no more sin. So that's what made this new. As we can read it, the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And since I take this metaphorically wholesale, so let's focus now on the absence of the enemy, whatever is evil, whatever is wicked, whatever is unrighteous. So there's no more sin. And the end result of sin is death. That's why we have here the sea was no more. I discussed that last time, that in you can write this down if you miss that point in Revelation 20:13. And the sea gave up the dead in it, that's death in Hades, gave up the dead in them, and all were judged by what they had done. So the symbol for the power and territory of death here, that actually swallowed up death and Hades itself. That's why it's all symbols. How can death swallow up death? When we read that actually the lake of fire is a symbol of, again, this might be new to you, but I already gave the references last time, is no other than God. All right. You can write this down. That's in Isaiah 25:6-9, and we read that last time. So when we say here that the sea was no more, representing the power and territory of death, that means there's no more death. It doesn't mean that in the new earth there will be no more sea. You get my point? So it's actually a diversion. It's a misinterpretation. If we take the book of Revelation literally, or some parts of it, like I said, and keep on saying, I don't cherry pick. As a systematic theologian, I take this all metaphorically, and it makes more sense. It's very coherent. You can see there the Christocentric motif, and also they're all interlinked if you're gonna take it as figure of speech. So before, yes, I was like you, or perhaps some of you, that I thought that in the new earth, there will be no more sea, only rivers or ponds. No, now I have to reinterpret. I have to change my position. Yes, it's a minor detail, but I'm telling you, you're gonna be swayed to different directions if you will keep on insisting that some parts are literal, like this one. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem. Is it really the new Jerusalem, or is the same Jerusalem here on earth? When we take this metaphorically, it's the same city. Why is it made new? There's no more sin. There's no more enemy, no more unrighteous, no more abomination, no more war in that part of the Middle East. That's why it's holy. Of course, Jerusalem is the holy city, coming down out of heaven from God. Is it really literal that there's that new Jerusalem in heaven coming down again? You see that that's a misinterpretation, diversion. What that means, I'm gonna explain that. Read that in Isaiah 65:17. Okay. And New Jerusalem coming down, still in Isaiah, that's in 52:1 and 66:2. That only shows union. What's that union? All right. We have to deal with the context. Genesis 1. You have there the union of heaven and earth. Why? There was no separation between heaven and earth in Genesis 1. There was only that separation after they disobeyed God's explicit will. That's why they were looking for God, and God was looking for them, and they were hiding. That's Adam and Eve. So you have there, again, metaphorically speaking, that demarcation, there was a gap created because of that disobedience. And now that gap is gone. You see that thing? Heaven and earth reuniting. So before, it's united, Genesis 1, and because of sin, it was disunited. You can see here the reunion of heaven and earth. And also the temple. You see there the imagery? The temple, like I explained before, inside of it was the depiction of what? Of garden. That's why you have their trees, you have their flowers, you have angels there. It's well decorated, typifying Eden, paradise, the union of heaven and earth. And we have the same imagery here. Jerusalem coming down from heaven to the earth. But the best depiction of this, the union between divine and human, or heaven and earth, is in the being of Jesus Christ himself. That's why he's fully God and fully human. Isn't it beautiful? I've been astounded when I finally realized and seeing the bigger picture. Of course, I'm just scratching the surface, that this is the proper interpretation of Revelation. That's why we have here bride. You know, the husband and wife, another union. They become one. Same imagery. So I hope you won't miss that point. And we have here the continuation of that motif. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is amongst mortals." And what you call that? You tell me. We can actually capture it. It's capsulated in the other name of Jesus Christ, Emmanuel. God dwelling with us, heaven and earth coming into union once more. He will dwell with them, they will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. And what's the result? Here in verse 4, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. That's why there's no more sea. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. For the first things have passed away. Again, we have to focus on the meaning, not on the objects or material that so we have here the new heaven physically and new Jerusalem physically. It's all talking about the absence of sin and death, and also the union between heaven and earth once more. You can read that in Leviticus 26:11 to 12. And death will be no more in Isaiah 25:8. Why? Tell me, why is heaven called heaven? Or why is the paradise in Eden called paradise? You know the meaning of paradise. It's like heaven, isn't it? Everything is positive. Everything is, well, in human perspective, it's all enjoyment. And then you have the characteristics here, the features. There will be no more tears, no more death, no more crying, no more pain. Yeah. And then eternal life. But what makes heaven heaven? What makes Eden a paradise? It's because of God's presence. You take away God from heaven, you take away God from Eden, that will be like what? Like hell here on earth, what we're experiencing right now. Of course, God is omnipresent, but the full revelation, according to the book that we've been considering for 6 months now, is that is God's intent, that is His supreme will for us to have no more divide between divine and human, between heaven and earth. And the result is this. So what? Why is it that there will be no more tears, no more pain, no more fear, no more death? It's because of that union with God. Let us not leave that sense, otherwise we'll be out of focus. So all things new, that's Isaiah 43:19. Why am I always referring to the Old Testament, especially to Isaiah? Because that's actually the theme of our study. That Revelation is highly informed by the prophetic books in the Old Testament. There are, I believe, 5 lines here in Revelation that are just copy paste from Isaiah and other prophetic books in the Old Testament. And the imageries, believe me, it's all taken from the Old Testament. So you can't go wrong. And why do I know this? Again, I keep on saying this. Concordance, simple. You have your concordance, you can double check the references here. And you can see the logic of what I've been talking about. The one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." And he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done." That this is reminiscent of what Jesus said on the cross, isn't it? It is finished. This is just echoing what has been done, what has been accomplished on the cross. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. 7, those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, all liars, that's a mouthful, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire, which I already explained, but I can expound on that later. And so for which is the second death. Okay. The one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Who is that one seated on the throne? It's no other than Jesus Christ. Why do we know? Because he mentioned there in the introduction of Revelation, isn't it? Revelation 1, that he is the Alpha and the Omega. And we have here in chapter 4 was saying that, in chapter 1 still, in verse 5 is Jesus Christ. Again, the Alpha and the Omega, first alphabet in Greek, last alphabet in Greek, that could be Aleph and then Tau, first alphabet in Hebrew and then last alphabet, last letter. What does that mean? It's not just that Jesus Christ is the beginning, therefore he's also the end. That's just the simplest way. But, whenever I talk, I always level up our understanding. Alpha and Omega, that means God has no end, that's Omega or Tau, simply because he has no beginning. That's the deeper sense. And God alone is that. No other being or no one in existence has no beginning. The reason why he has no end, he has no beginning. Wow, that's everlasting. That's the deeper sense of eternality. That's why he is sovereign in all and all, because he is like no other. The beginning and the end. All right. Should I refer you to that anyway? Yeah, perhaps. This is your homework. Isaiah, which we'll be explaining next time. Why is God sovereign? Isaiah 46, 9 to 10. Just write that down. We're going to explain that next time. That's the deeper sense of God being in charge simply because He's the beginning and the last. All right. That's why we have here in verse 7 the word conquer. How can he conquer if he's not sovereign overall? So to the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from this. Remember that word, very important word. This is crucial. Gift. It's got everything to do with chapter 22. From the spring of water of life. So water of life, you can read that in Isaiah 55:1. Another text for Jesus Christ being Alpha and Omega, it's not a new concept, believe me. It's been there in the Old Testament. Again, in Isaiah, that's 46, 9 to 10. That means God shall accomplish his purpose and no one can stop him. Believe me, no one can stop the sovereign. And then we have here on verse 8, these are all abominable things or characteristics which informs us of our reading why there's no abominable thing or being that is welcomed in the New Jerusalem. Again, when I speak about the New Jerusalem, it's not physical. This is also the world made new. Why made new? I keep on saying this because of the union or reunion between God and humanity. And their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and so far. I explained that last time, and I'm going to say that again for your benefit, that fire alone does the job of consuming, of destroying, of erasing, of annihilation. Why is it always partnered with sulfur? Over and over again, many times here in Revelation. And you can see the same thing in the Old Testament. Because it's not talking about destruction, about annihilating, wiping out of God's enemies, but it's about transforming his enemies into friends and actually into his brothers and sisters. I'm talking about Jesus Christ. That's why he's the firstborn in creation and the firstborn amongst the dead. Others will follow that path. That's why we have that resurrection, which is the second death. There will be no more death because there will be no more sin, etc. What we read. Pain, fear, all the negativity. So 9, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 plagues, again, chiastic method, it's reminiscent of what we studied all along. You can see here the coherence. It's very coherent, very consistent with its theme. Came and said to me, come, I will show you the bride. Oh, yes, again, bride, union. And the bride is actually the wife of the Lamb. Why mention the Lamb? It's got something that's very weighty, actually heavyweight, informing us how to read 22, but that will be next week. And in the spirit, he carried away to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. It has the glory and a radiance like a very rare jewel, like jasper, clear as crystal. It has great high wall with 12 gates. Again, these are all imageries. Don't take it literally. You'll be lost. Just take it as it is. It's all in a vision. And the gates, 12 angels, and on the gates are inscribed the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. On the east, 3 gates, on the north, 3 gates, on the south, 3 gates, on the west, 3 gates. And the wall of the city has 12 foundations, and on them there are 12 names and 12 apostles of the Lamb. You know, if you're gonna insist on taking this literally, I've seen a lot of portrayal trying to depict the New Jerusalem. It couldn't even come close. It's four square, isn't it? It's perfect. New Jerusalem, perfect square, and then having that what you call that transparent gold is it's beyond human comprehension. If you're gonna paint it, you're gonna draw it, or whether you use technology, it cannot capture. Why? Because it's not intended to paint. It's not intended to draw. It's all symbolic. How do I know? You can read that in Psalm 89, 28 to 29, that will be sons and daughters. And you have there, I mentioned the lake of fire, Isaiah 30, 33, and the New Jerusalem, Isaiah 40, verse 2. Anyway, if you won't be catching up this references, Bible text, I'm gonna upload this on my YouTube channel because I believe it's not synced with FIC YouTube at the moment. And then the 12 gates, the one we've read is in Ezekiel 48, 30 to 36. 12 gates represents 12 tribes of Israel. That's in the Hebrew manuscript. And in our manuscript, we call that the New Testament. The counterpart is what? The 12 apostles. You see there, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles. But you know what? Let us broaden our perspective. Do you know that Ishmael's descendants got 12 prince as well? So you have there 12 prince or 12 tribes from Isaac, and also 12 prince or princess, plural prince, okay, from Ishmael. You see, God is very fair. He's balanced with his treatment of humanity. And we have there here the same motif 12 in the New Testament. All right. So it only means that the focus here is the temple. That's why you have these imageries. And you have the temple, depiction of the temple there in heaven. We call it heavenly temple again. It's metaphorical. It's all symbols. That's why that temple in heaven will come down here again. Union of divine and human, union of heaven and earth. So the focus here is the temple where God resides, where you have the Shekinah. That's why we have here in verse 15 to measure. Measure what? This talks about the temple. When actually the Revelation is talking about the temple where you have there the throne of God, where you have worshipers, and then those four strange creatures. Those creatures are animals. You can see that in the furnishings in the temple. or whether that is you're referring to the Mosaic sanctuary during the time of Moses, the great tent. It's the same thing. You see there the physical and then the symbolic in heaven. That's why we have here, why measure? That means you focus on this object because this object got a lesson. We call that object lesson. All right. You have here 3 in all sides, north, east, west, south. Representing what? Like the 4 angels in the 4 corners of the earth. Representing what? You tell me. That God is in charge over all, whatever side that is, whatever direction. He's sovereign all in all, in all, whatever happens here on earth. That's why we have that prayer that Jesus himself taught us. May your will be done on earth as in heaven. Do you think that's just wishful thinking? Or that's simply God's aspiration? No, it's a command that God's will in heaven will be on earth as well. And we have chapter 21 as our evidence that's happening here. And in our case, it's going to happen when Jesus comes back. Okay, and you have here the Lamb as well. 12 apostles of the Lamb. You see, 12 tribes, 12 apostles. And the angel who talked to me had a measuring rod of gold. We have seen this measuring rod over and over again here in Revelation. Whenever there's mention of measuring rod, it talks about the temple, measuring of the temple, the inner court, the outer court. It only calls our attention to focus on the temple. Why? Because the temple is where the seat of God is. His center of command. And in the temple, and most of the temple, that is the mercy seat. God's central command. And what does that tell us? His command, his control, is unlike the tyrant emperors or kings because his seat is the seat of mercy, not a seat of coercion, not a seat of self-centeredness, but it's all the opposite. The city lies 4 square again. 4 square. What does that mean? That's why it's good luck if you're gonna take this literally. 4 square, 4 direction, 4 winds, 4 gates in all sides, 3 gates. Yeah, it's not the same as its width. That's why I said it's perfect square. And they measure the city. Why perfect square? It talks about God's perfect character. Whatever God does, whatever God plans, whatever God says, according to his divine operation, according to his foreordination, it's all perfect. So please don't measure this 1,500 months. It's just saying symbolically, you have here perfect and then equal. You also measured its walls. It's actually a repeat of what we've read here, where you have the 3 gates on all sides. Now you have here precious stones, jasper. All right. We have sapphire, agate, emerald, onyx. You know where you can find all of these precious stones, these gems? In the temple. Specifically where? On the chest of the high priest. So it's talking about the temple, having there the seat of power, where you have there seated Jesus Christ, of course, beside the Father. And Jesus Christ being the high priest. You can't go wrong if you're gonna take this Christocentrically. It talks about Jesus Christ. And the 12 gates are 12 pearls. Again, 12 apostles, 12 tribes, 12 pearls. Each of the gates is a single pearl. That's why I said good luck if you're gonna take this literally. And the street of the city is pure gold, transparent as glass. There's nothing like it. Yes, I definitely agree, because it shouldn't be taken literally. It's all symbolic. Gold. This is the reverse of the, what's that? The great image in Daniel 2, isn't it? Where the head is just, the gold is just the head. This is, that means everything here from top to bottom, where you have there transparent glass. The kingdom, God's kingdom, will never end. It will not devalue. It will not weaken. That's why we have the unshakable kingdom of God. This is what these texts are portraying, referring to. So next time, yes, it's nice to think that, wow, heaven is really great, isn't it? You have jewels all around. Why is it that we can't wear jewels here and there in heaven? You have they're full of jewels. I used to have a member in the Philippines that was her exact argument. That's why she wears jewels. But I'd like to say that's wrong hermeneutics. You see, that's why you'll get lost if you take this literally. Well, we might as well now change our outlook, how, uh, how we take the book of Revelation. The focus is Jesus Christ being the high priest there in the temple, the seat of power. That's why you have here the four corners of the earth is totally sovereign. What happens here on earth is as willed in or coming from God's throne. 22, I saw no temple in the city. Well, you might say, oh, Pastor, where can you read of those? Measuring rod is Ezekiel 43:3-5. And then the measurements itself, still in Ezekiel, that's 48:16-17. And of course, you can double check. Go to Exodus, also in Leviticus. Find these gems, these stones. You will find it there on the chest of the high priest. Nothing is lacking, believe me. So it's for the first audience of this epistle called Revelation. That's for the Jewish Christians. They knew what John was talking about, what John was trying to portray. But for us, we're out of context. And sadly, we misinterpret this. But to them, that was very clear. 22, I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. You see here the mention of the Lamb so many times. Take this down. You know, in Revelation, Jesus Christ is presented, portrayed, depicted as the Lamb 27 times. Write that down, please, because you're going to use this next week. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. People will bring into it the glory and honor of the nations. Take note of that nations. You're going to see that again in 22. But nothing unclean, I said, nothing abominable. Remember what we read earlier, the fornicators, sorcerers, etc. Nor anyone who practices abomination or falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. So there will be no sun, no need for the sun and moon. That's Isaiah 24:23. And then 52:1. No night, because Jesus is the light. That's in Isaiah 60:19. So if you're going to take this all metaphorically, it now makes sense. You can see the bigger picture and you won't be confused with the details of this imagery because you focus on Jesus Christ being the light, Jesus Christ being the high priest, and Jesus Christ sitting there on the throne, and Jesus Christ erasing finally. There'll be no more sin and death and its repercussions. So it makes more sense. And I hope it does to you. So we now go to our Q&A. As I promised, I will end before 8 o'clock. Questions or additional insights?
Pastor, I just want to actually comment on verse 6, where it says, "To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the
Yes,
spring of the water of life."
right.
I just feel if it's thirst, really, it's just, satisfaction from of life. It goes beyond thirst.
Yeah, that's
It
why it's
provides
figure of speech.
life.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's beyond. It's just really, the gift of God and the things that come from him is just way beyond what we expect.
Exactly.
That's my take on that.
Good point. Thank you. Because if we're bound by its literal interpretation, we will be like the Samaritan woman when Jesus says, I can give you water that's never ending. So we're gonna be astounded, we're gonna be confused, and we're gonna have difficulty in interpreting that. If we're gonna take this literally, we'll be like her. Well, Jesus was actually saying he is life. So water represents life. We know without water, all living beings or creatures will die. And when we say water of life, we have that same theme here in chapter 22, flowing from the throne of God. So we can see here it's really consistent that everything here points to Jesus Christ. And why it's a gift? Again, whenever we talk about grace, it's inseparable from Jesus Christ. It's all a gift. Any more?
Good evening, Pastor Nikki. It's Cynthia.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've got a question. You see, I was late, so I caught
Right.
the part, the what you said about the all the precious stones
Right.
were like symbolical. Can you
They
please
are.
give us a supporting text in the Bible that says that it's all symbolical?
Which one?
The precious, did I
Precious
get it
stones
right?
here?
Yeah. That they're just
Yeah, the precious stones and the gem.
the gems, yeah.
Yes, I already alluded to that fact that when God talks about the gates, he's talking, the reference is Ezekiel 48:30 to 36. And when he says that measure it, that's in Ezekiel 43 to 5. Well, if you've missed all this text and my previous explanation, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. I've been alluding to this fact from other chapters that we discuss, actually, when God says you measure it and its measure is 1,600 stadia, and then including the worshipers there in heaven, it all points to the temple which God commanded, sanctuary, during the time of Moses, and the actual temple, the permanent one, there in Jerusalem.
Okay,
Again, I
thank you.
said you can double check. All these gems are actually found on the breastplate of the high priest.
Yeah.
But they were actual on the breast of the high priest, weren't they? But
Yes,
so
yes,
in
they are.
heaven, it's only symbolical. Is that what we? Did I get it right?
Yeah, because when God ordered Moses to make a replica of what he'd seen, and he did so, and that's all physical. That's why we have the physical tent, the physical furnishings, including the physical robe of the high priest, and then the plate here where you have the gems. But here in Revelation, okay, this is actually the key in interpreting Revelation. Revelation 1:10. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice saying, he was seeing all of this in the Spirit. That means it's not physical. That's why we have the body and the spirit. Okay. So you have the tent, that's physical. It's the same thing with the temple. But here, as it pans out, as we unpack Revelation, John is seeing all of this with his mind's eye, not with his physical eyes. And if we would really be strict and true with our interpretation, why is it that whenever we discuss Acts 10, you see that Peter's vision of that blanket where you have those abominable unclean animals, we emphasize that that was merely a vision. We shouldn't take it literally. And now we have a different standard for interpreting Revelation. It shouldn't be the case. We should be consistent with our argument. If it's a vision, it's a vision. It's all symbols. It's metaphorical. It's figure of speech. But then again, perhaps the reader might say, well, why don't we take some things here literal? And yes, some are symbolic. My follow-up question is, how do you know which is literal, which is symbolic? Well, one might say, well, it's obvious. Then tell me, why is it obvious and why are you very sure about it? To be safe, Okay. And it makes more sense according to our study. And we've been doing this. I've been consistent from day one for the past 6 months. I've taken all of this symbolically, figures of speech metaphorically, and it's coherent. It's consistent with the theme, and it points to Jesus Christ.